Well, hey there, you're on the internet, and I still have too much free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Today's ink is by Noodler's Sequoia Green. It's a very deep, rich green. If I had to compare it to something, I'd say it's a bit like Diamine Sherwood, except it's just not quite as dark. So here's the chromatography. It's a very interesting chromatography. As you can see, there's some potential for water resistance, albeit in a slightly different color. And then you see this great rich band that stops at the top. It's a great shading ink. It's one of the qualities about it that I like. The pen I used was this Pilot 78G. However, this one is in a Double-Broad. It's a stub, and I love these pens. And when it says double-broad, they mean double-broad. This is twice as broad as the single-broad Pilot 78G, so it leaves quite a line, and I kind of like it. Starting from the top down, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. Super well behaved. Good flow. I'd say average flow. It's not wet. It's not overly dry. The stub definitely brings out its shading qualities, which I hope you can see, like in the word brown, like the word weirdo. No bleed feather spread, and as you can see in the water test, it's not perfect. It won't completely resist water, but there will be some remaining, and where you leave more ink will remain. So those were sort of the downstrokes. So here's Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Here again, fantastic shading. Hope you can see that in the Noodlers and Pilot. It's a very deep brown, but it's a vibrant brown. It does almost look like a Sequoia's like rich green needles. It's a great color. I grew up in California. I know the Sequoias. That's definitely what comes to mind. Dry time was 8 seconds. Nope, if I forgot to say. Clairefontaine dry time was 10 seconds, which is not bad for this dense of a paper. Here it was 8. Also not bad for this dense of a paper. Here I said great shading. I actually really do love the shading in this. Water test, again, where you leave more ink will remain. I don't know if it's coming through on camera, but it's actually pretty clear. It's pretty readable, but it is pretty faint. Now, it did start to come apart a bit, so in parts, like here in the R and between the S and the T. So, something to consider. Tomoe River Paper. Fantastic shading. I felt like it made it look a little more gray, but maybe that's just me. Yeah, love it on this paper. Dry time is 12 seconds, which comparatively for this paper certainly isn't the worst that I've seen, or that anyone who's seen these videos can attest to. 30 seconds has happened more than twice, so there you go. No bleed feather spread, some show through because it is a very dark ink. So if you're really sensitive to that, then, you know, something to be aware of. Water test was not fantastic, but it's definitely readable. Here, you know, you can definitely see that the ink kind of changed color. It looks much more brownish almost, but there's that. 20-pound copy paper. I think this is just great white brand. Here you still have shading, which is fantastic. A lot of times the more absorbent papers can rob that shading, but here it's still there. If I still had to deal with a lot of copier paper and I wanted to enjoy my time writing, then I would definitely consider using this ink. 6 seconds to dry, really not bad. I said some show through, but sort of once it dried, it really wasn't that noticeable. Again, it's kind of more when you lay it across a white background, so maybe if you're sensitive to that, But water test was very good, I felt. That seems definitely the most readable of the ones so far. It had good flow. Yeah, no, loved it on the copier paper. Here is Mead Notebook Paper. It's that ubiquitous American, find it everywhere paper that's terrible. It's just awful, awful quality. There is some bleed, but as I say, not the worst ever, especially when you consider that this is a double broad nib. And there's some feather, but again, not the worst ever. So it's kind of just in parts, like here in the B and the L, but up here in jumps it's really not that bad. So I sort of didn't know what to make of that, but there wasn't much spread. But again, as I say, no more shading, which is sad. Not the best collision of pen, paper, and ink. But it does dry almost instantly. The water test was like an algae farm. That was not good. And the paper got pretty affected. So, And lastly is Moleskine paper, where there was a lot of feathering and there was a good deal of spread, which granted in an already pretty broad nib was not great. There was some bleed through, but again, when you consider how broad the nib is, that's not that bad. This is the water test, so I feel like there should be a curve for that. Water test was pretty disastrous. That's again kind of an algae farm. That's pretty explosive, and a lot of it washed away, which, you know, and 7 seconds to dry, it's just that, yeah, no, I don't recommend it for this paper. I really don't. It just didn't do well. Yeah, so that's Noodler Sequoia. It's much appreciated ink of mine, but again, I'm out of school, so I don't need to use things like Meade Paper. So it's very rich green. It has, in my experience, better staying power than Diamine's Sherwood. I love the bottle art. I think that's great. I think it has good flow, and it has good shading, and it does great on Rhodia and those types of papers. Looks great on Tomoe River. And, you know, it's just kind of a fascinating ink. But let me know your thoughts, your experiences. I'd love to hear them. Give me a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. Always great to know people like what I do. And hopefully I'll see you again soon on the Triple N Network. So long. Bye.